So I think the question is more, why did I leave Miami, which gets back to why I came back to Miami. I am a Miami native. I was born here. I lived here my entire life. And I got to a point with the traffic and I don't know, I needed to leave Miami. And I tried to find the most opposite place to Miami in the entire country. And I moved to Boulder, Colorado. And it was what I thought. It was pristine. It was perfect. Everybody there agreed with me in every single way. And I started to feel stifled and kind of bored. And during the 12 years I lived in Boulder, I would continue to come back to Miami on a regular basis. I was here every other month. And I would get off the plane and I would immediately feel like I was being enveloped. I loved the humidity, which I used to complain about, but then I was so parched in Boulder. And so there came a time with my kids leaving, needing a change, and I came back feeling very zen about the things that I didn't like about Miami. I do not I rarely complain about the traffic, never about the heat or the humidity or the many things that people complain about, because I was gone 12 years and now I just see the positive things, the cultural diversity. There's always something to talk about. In Boulder it was, I went for a really great hike yesterday. There's always some scandal or novelty or new things happening. And I still go back to Boulder. I get the advantage of being able to go back and forth and having the best of both worlds. But I just love being here. It's interesting. So I graduated from Miami Public Schools, really not knowing what to do with myself. And the only thing I could think of is, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I ended up going away to college. I went to law school at Georgetown and came out and started working at a big law firm. And over the years, I felt like Goldilocks. I was at a big law firm, and I didn't like that. It's unfulfilling. It's soulless. I'm going to go to a small law firm. It was the same but smaller. The conflict was in every aspect of the law that I did, which was litigation. Every aspect was conflict. Internally at the law firm, needing to make your hours. With the judges, opposing counsel, your client. It was a drag. So then I thought, I want to be a litigator. I like to talk. I'm going to take a drastic pay cut and go work at the state attorney's office where I can have lots of trials. And then I got there and I did have lots of trials, and that part was fun, I suppose. But I didn't have the soul of a prosecutor. Possession of cocaine, he won't do it again. I just did not have it in me to prosecute those kinds of cases. And so in a very retro move, I did what women are criticized for doing. I got pregnant and quit my job and stayed home with my kids. And I had so much fun. And I did end up going back when they were older. I said, I'm not going to do litigation. There's too much conflict. I'm going to do estate planning, which was interesting. I was like the rock star in the negative way of the estate planning community. I mean, they do taxes and stuff. So I did do that for a couple of years. I had my own firm until I moved back to Miami, at which point I'm moving back to a new interesting place. There was no way, no how that I was ever going to go back to practicing law. So I did find a bed that was just right, like Goldilocks, but it didn't involve really practicing law. So a friend of mine was hosting a brunch with two nonprofits that she really liked and supported, because she wanted her friends to know about these nonprofits and if they wanted to get involved. So I went to the lunch, and then one of the nonprofits was LEAP. And at this luncheon, one of the LEAP graduates shared her story. And I fell in love with her. I fell in love with the mission. and LEAP is small now, but it was really small back then, and I immediately volunteered. At the time, that was a period when I was not working at all. I had just moved back to Miami, wanting to do something that was meaningful, that I could use to get engaged in the community. And I started volunteering for LEAP, and I actually went into the prison, and where I was assigned a mentor. And my mentee was Cafe, who to this day I am very close with, and she's actually on LEAP's board of directors. I picked her up from prison when she got out. Unfortunately, housing is an issue in Miami, so I dropped her off at Camilla's house, and she is doing great, and I'm still really close with her. So that's how I first learned about LEAP. So, not to get too bogged down in statistics, but they're important. A lot of people think of women or men in prison with, to the extent that they think of them as just getting what they deserved and paying their debt to society. But the truth is, for the vast, vast majority, they were victims way before they were ever labeled as criminals. And they were kids, people who didn't get what they needed and what they deserved early on. So over 80% of women in prison were victims of childhood sexual trauma, which oftentimes led to addiction, which over 80% of the time also led to relationships that involved domestic violence. And so between the addiction, the domestic violence, the childhood trauma, it leads to jail and prison many times. And so for the women that come through our program, not only do they have those backgrounds, many of them never graduated from high school. We have people who were forced to leave school in 7th grade, and we have people all the way up with master's degrees. I mean, it can happen to anybody, but the truth is that it happens to people who didn't get the help they needed way before they were ever labeled as criminals and went to prison. So many things. So on a larger scale, LEAP does amazing work. I will sit next to a person on an airplane who does not have the option of getting up and show her pictures, talk about it incessantly. But we're a small organization, and yes, we'll talk about how you can volunteer. But the more important thing is the conversation, because men and women, but it's more important for women because women are mothers. Over 70% of women in jail and prison are parents to young children. They're the primary caregivers. So it's very important that they are able to get housing and jobs when they get out. But the truth is, somebody coming out of prison, let's assume they have money and resources and family support, which most don't. In Florida, somebody coming out of prison who is indigent is given $50. Not getting a cell phone, housing. Many don't qualify for social services like food stamps because they're excluded from those programs. But let's just say they have money. Landlords will not rent to them. And if they have money, getting a mortgage, good luck, because lenders also take that into account. The fact that anybody stays out of prison after coming out and facing those sorts of obstacles is a miracle. And so the conversation needs to change for the well-being, not just of the women, but of their children and our community at large. It's important that we acknowledge they need a place to live. They need a job. They should not be excluded from vocational programs. Somebody who wants to be a nail technician can go through the schooling and still be excluded from getting a license in Florida because of their criminal conviction. They have to apply for a special waiver to do nails. Not true for people running for public office. You can have a criminal conviction and be a congressperson, but you can't be a nail technician. So the conversation needs to change. Now, in terms of getting involved with LEAP specifically, there's lots of ways. One easy way really is social media, because again, it gets back to changing the narrative. Getting involved in social media, sharing our posts, engaging, letting other people know that you support second chances and first chances for people who have experienced incarceration would be amazing. But we also have opportunities to be, like I was, a mentor. I would say that I personally received way more out of the relationship of the person that I mentored than she got from me. It really was transformative and continues to be. We have a thrift store that is a social enterprise where women coming out of our in-prison program are able to work. Everything in the store is donated. When you purchase things from the store, every single thing, every single dollar goes back into our program. Our entire staff are women who graduated from our programs, from our manager to our retail associates. And you can come in and see firsthand the fact that somebody has a record does not necessarily mean they're going to be a less than ideal employee. My experience is that they are the best employees, and you will come here and see and get great service. So shop with us. We also have an online store, which again was started by the women that work for us. We have an e-commerce site, dragonflythrift.org, and shop with us. And then we have volunteers for everything in between. 3 of our grant writing team, which is me and 3 volunteers who come in and write our grants. We have people who come in and help with social media. We have people who just come in because the store is an awesome, welcoming place that you just want to be. It's sort of a community gathering spot. You can come in and volunteer at the store. We have monthly events that some of them are serious. We talk about issues related to reentry and prison and criminal justice reform. But one of our core values here at LEAP and Dragonfly is to have fun. I mean, that's really, so we do things. The last Wednesday of every month, we do something. Last month it was karaoke. The month before that, we did a poetry night, an open mic poetry night. So last Wednesday of every month, you can just go to our LEAP website, which is leap4ladies.org, and that will also outline other ways that you can get involved. So I received a message and a text from somebody saying they were from the Vice President's office, and I immediately deleted that because there's no reason in the world why the Vice President would be contacting us, and I felt for sure that it was just spam of some sort. And then the person from our office was quite persistent and ended up calling other people from my staff trying to get a hold of us. And honestly, to this day, we're not sure exactly why she chose to come to Dragonfly. We like to think it's because if you Google thrift stores in Miami, we are going to be one of the top spots. We think we're the best thrift store in Miami. We've been rated the top thrift store by the Miami New Times in the past, and if you Google us, we're always right at the top. So, but then, to be realistic, I started thinking, was somebody from the Vice President's office Googling thrift stores in Miami? And I'm thinking, it might not be because we're the best thrift store in Miami. The truth is that the Vice President has a long history and interest in reentry issues, and to the extent that she's also interested in issues related to women. LEAP is literally the only program in the state that focuses exclusively on reentry for women. And we're the only organization in the state that does a continuum of care that starts in incarceration and continues afterwards in terms of employment and housing. And so I think those are issues she had been talking about. And so she ended up here. Although the call was, she might stop by. Maybe, we can't promise, but don't tell anybody. And the next day, we received a call. We think she's coming. You should be prepared, but still do not say anything to anybody. And so the senior staff, on a need-to-know basis, immediately started to spruce the store up. And we look good every day, but to make it look even better. And then gradually, people started wandering in, men in dark suits and earpieces, who, when we asked, or when the ladies working who didn't know that the vice president might be coming, asked if, oh, can I help you? These men in dark suits insisted they were just looking around and shopping, which of course, our ladies, another thing people with a record are really good at is spotting somebody else committing a crime. So they were on alert that these men were for sure shoplifters. And meanwhile, we had more pouring in, and eventually we told everybody, actually, before we shared the news, police started showing up. We had police car, we had helicopters, and one of the women, and this often happens, one of the women from our program had an old outstanding warrant from another state where she would not be extradited. And her name was Lori, and Lori became convinced that these helicopters, the 10 police cars, the men in the dark suits were FBI agents coming to get her on her warrant, like for credit card or something minor. And she was freaking out that they were about to carry her away. And meanwhile, the men in the store could hear and see what's going on and see her reaction. So when Kamala's, the vice president's people came in, they sing, Lori is from, also relevant, from West Virginia with a very southern sort of hillbilly accent. They insisted they wanted Lori to be the first one to meet the vice president. They staged the entrance. They had Lori out front, and who was the first to not just meet the vice president, but also to get a hug. And Kamala shopped. We offered to give her a free t-shirt, but she said that would be breaking the rules, and she actually bought something. And I think that's on her Instagram because everybody wanted to know what she bought, but it was something for her home, like a, I don't know, piece of ceramic piece or something. But it was so cool, and it was a highlight, not just for LEAP as an organization, but for the ladies. They just felt so seen. And we actually, it did raise awareness. I mean, this goes to show, raise awareness. We ended up being featured on Fox News, which I'd always, should not make assumptions, assumed would not be a place that would support what we do. And they featured the vice president's visit. It wasn't very positive as far as her, but it was very positive about us. And I got a call from somebody in Indiana who wanted to send us $50 because she was so moved by our mission. So it was really so cool. I'm vegetarian, and one of my many complaints about Miami before I moved and came back was that there were no vegetarian restaurants here, and that Boulder had so many more, which it did, but that has changed. And so one of my favorite restaurants in Miami is this small place in Coconut Grove called Minty Z's. It is owned by a husband and wife. It's sort of small, very local. It is delicious. So that is one of my favorite places. And the other thing I love about Miami is I love all things Latin. I love Latin music. I like Latin food. And so I really like going down to Cafe La Trova on 8th Street down towards around 17th Avenue. The food is delicious. The chef is Michelle Bernstein, who's kind of famous. And there's always live music, always live Latin music. On any given night, people get up just spontaneously and start dancing. They've got amazing cocktails. So I love Cafe La Trova. The other little hidden gem that I like is a place called Bar Nancy. It's sort of like a neighborhood bar, but almost every single night of the week, they feature live talent, live music. Interestingly, one person that performs there a lot is this woman, April Nicole, who moved to Miami and fell in love with Dragonfly. She is an amazingly talented photographer and videographer, and she volunteered for us, but she's also an amazing singer-songwriter, so she writes there. So there's just always something cool happening in Miami and interesting. So those are some of my favorite places that are close by that I like to go to.